Hello, welcome to Garblag Games. We are playing Dark Heresy 1st edition, and we are on the edge of the Emperor's Light. Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of On the Emperor's Light. And we are returning once again to the 41st millennium with our wonderful collection of Imperial Inquisitorial agents who are out to follow their orders and save the, investigate with prejudice, I think is the best description.
Oh, I like
they
it.
have been doing.
I do that.
I think that's my character's job description.
We've got it already.
Investigate with prejudice. That's an Elven title.
In
It is.
In a few moments, we'll go round and everyone can introduce themselves once again. But before we do, a couple of quick messages, of course, from Pete and the rest of Garblag Games. Please take a look at the rest of the Garblag Games stuff and all of the social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course Discord as well. A couple of quick shout-outs as well. Thornless Rose, Garblag sponsor.
Just about tidying up
Just
on the
about.
edge of the Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter was finished.
They're about to meet the stretch goals, aren't they?
Oh, they've hit many.
They've hit several of them.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's more than.
Oh yeah.
More
Yep.
than some.
Please go and check them out. The wonderful.
How much money is on now?
Lots.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's doing very
Smashed
well.
And if you're interested in these in particular, please take a look at the channel. Pete has been
Oh yeah, Pete had a how-to video.
had a how-to on
when
how
he
to
made that.
make this. So
Time-lapsed it.
yeah, go and take a look. That's quite fun to watch, that one. And of course, we should also have a shout out to our friend in the
Resident noisemaker.
our resident noisemaker in the studio.
Oh,
Please
John.
go and check out.
Well,
Please check out the link below as well to his channel for the very interesting music that comes out of that as well.
And the soundtrack for Grimdark.
Yes, of course. So go check that out as well. So, without further ado, starting on my left.
speaking of Grimdark.
Hello. I'm John. I'm playing Griff Guderian, Imperial Guardsman.
Oh, it's me. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I'm Mark. Hi, welcome. I'm Mark. I'm playing Bug. I'm a tech priest.
I'm Sam. I'm playing Galva, and she is scum.
It's true.
Doesn't sound, does it?
Hi, I'm Roger. I'm playing Lex, and I am an arbitrator.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm playing Gaius, and I'm a cleric.
So, after the events of last time, where you bravely defended the church from a very strange underground attack and horrible creature,
Glistening lump.
yes, glistening lump. I think it's only fair for your brave deeds. Everyone is getting 250 XP to spend, so
Straight down KFC.
Imperial KFC.
Other fast food restaurants are available.
so
CFC? Cadian
Cadian.
Fried Chicken?
Yeah. It was either Cadian or Caliban.
Yeah.
Cat-chan.
Cadian Fried Chicken.
yeah. So if you guys have a think about what you're obviously going to spend that on,
Oh, no.
and
Do we have to do that now?
Decisions.
No, well,
spend it when you're ready.
I need another 250 XP, so I'm not going to spend it on anything.
Fair enough.
Oh, well
Hint,
done
hint,
past
nudge,
me.
nudge, give me more money.
Well done past me. I wrote down the costs of all my stat increases,
Ah.
so I don't need a book.
How dare you be so efficient?
Teacher's pet.
I can't do any skills. I didn't write them down. Don't need skills.
They get more complicated. There's quite a lot. There's long tables in the books for those. So, last time you finished with the sound of the crowd outside swelling in song, giving their praise to the Emperor as the preacher stepped out to prove that he was alive and that the darkness had been defeated. And as you follow him out onto the sort of steps of the chapel, you can see the square is surprisingly full. This is more than just the congregation.
Everyone came out.
this is obviously the sound of gunfire and battle has actually it's drawn people in from the surrounding area.
Oh well, so much for our covert operation.
The
Should have got a silencer. Don't.
and the entire square is filled. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people packed into this square, and all of them are singing.
Good.
It's a slightly strange experience because they're all outside and they're all singing, but because of you're obviously in an enclosed dome, there is a slight echo. They're loud enough to actually echo off the dome
That's cool.
roof. This can be heard throughout the entire dome you're in to some extent.
That would be really spooky if you were like somewhere a mile or so over there and you're just like...
Unless they're singing Kumbaya, because that can never be spooky.
Yeah.
Kumbaya, Emperor, Kumbaya.
Kumbaya, Emperor, Kumbaya. Oh, yes.
It's going to be a weird one tonight.
It's going to be a weird one tonight. So you step out onto the thing as the priest sort of joins them for the last verse. They've been singing for some time, and as they finish, he holds his hand. He sort of holds his hands high, and you can hear him he starts to speak, and it's obviously you know that he's been wheezing while he's been talking to you before, but you can hear no trace of that now. It's clear as he speaks, and he starts with a brief prayer, and then he goes, and then he's standing proud to the people. This voice sort of echoing off the buildings. He goes, "Good people, those who have stood and sung in the Emperor's name, I thank you. I thank you all for your help and your strength. By your strength and the strength of these good pilgrims here, the darkness that has invaded our sacred space has been thrown back by the Emperor's light. We should rejoice. The temple is damaged, but you are the true strength of the Emperor. You still stand, and together we will ensure that the Emperor's light does not fade. Please now return to your homes. Take rest. But do not forget this day, for on this day the light has prevailed. Ave Imperator." Ave Imperator echoes back from hundreds of voices across, and you can start to hear the sort of sound of talking as people start to disperse. There's a few who sort of seem to be hanging around. There is what appears to be an impromptu prayer group has formed around the statue in the centre of the plaza. It's got 20, 30 people, and there seem to be a few people in the blue sort of clothing that seem to be either the sort of the lay preachers or the temple workers or the temple sort of guardians or whatever. It can be seen there, and there are a few others dotted about who seem to be helping those who may have been injured or hurt in leaving.
Yep.
There were some injuries. They're helping, and others are returning into the temple to do what they can to probably clean up, repair, make safe what they
There's
can.
definitely some cleaning up.
Shouldn't we go and have a look in that hole?
Yeah, I don't feel like we're really any further forward in figuring out what
No, we
else
killed a
going
big
on,
monster,
so-
but we should probably go and have a look in that hole.
The priest turns to you, and you can see it's quite obvious when sort of close up to him that he's still standing proud, he's still standing tall, but you can see the strain that's putting on him now. You can see it in sort of the eyes and the sort of... He's standing up because his muscles have basically just gone stiff. He's basically... You can see how tired he is at this point, and there's a definite suggestion that there's still that sort of slightly glazed look to his vision that suggests he's not quite with it still.
Someone good at medic rolls.
He turns to you and goes, thank you for all you have done to this day. I wish I could give you something, but at this time, with what has happened, I fear that I cannot properly reward you for the services you have done this day. However, please visit again if you can over the next few days, and I hope to be able to organise a proper thank you for your brave service in the Emperor's name. If you will excuse me, I should rest. But if you need anything, please speak with one of the Guardians. They will undoubtedly give you any help you require. The Emperor has blessed me this day with you. I hope that I may get to know you better before your pilgrimage takes you wherever the Emperor wishes it to go next. He makes the sign of the Aquila across his chest, bows to you, and sort of walks back into the temple, and you see him turn and start to sort of walk off to one side, and then sort of disappears into the temple.
Well, we should probably go and have a look in the hole before they cover it up.
I agree.
Fair enough. You
Back into the temple.
Yeah, there's no. You see, there are people. You catch sight. There are definitely people watching you go back in, but no one approaches you. There's a certain wariness, I think, in the
We're all about
population.
to jump in a hole the monster came out of. The monster's corpse is still there, though, isn't it?
What's left of it?
Yeah,
Presumably,
I assume so. Yeah.
I think so, this bit.
While you,
And this evidence bag.
as you walk back into the temple, Bug, the servitor that you were controlling has returned to its holding pen, and the sort of overlay fades from your vision, and you're sort of left standing in the temple with the other with the Magus beside you. He's seemingly engrossed in something on the machine in front of him, but as you sort of take a slight step back, as the it's quite a strange experience having this extra vision and then having it just leave you is a little bit disorientating, and you see his sort of head come up and goes, "Ah, good. You were successful then, my brother. It is good to know. And no damage sustained to the good machine either. You are an excellent example of control. I applaud you."
Thank you.
I have managed to collate my findings based on the sensor reports from the temple. He pulls a data slate out of a port on the machine he's working on, hands it to you and goes, "I hope that this will be able to help you in the future. Please feel free to remain in the temple if you wish. If not, you are always welcome here at any time. I am always in residence. It would be good to commune with you again. However, at this time, I must return to the lesser chapel, as the devotions are required there, and the sound of the cogwheels, if they are not greased at the proper times, is an affront to the Omnisire." He bows, making the sign of the cog to you, and quietly hovers away, leaving you.
I know, right? Who knew? Who knew? Okay. I'm just going to have a quick look at this data slate before I make moves, just in case I need...
Yeah, it has basically it has all the sensory reports that the temple has taken, things that set off the alarms. It also includes picked captures from the servitor. So you have picked captures of elements of the fight and the creature.
Action replay.
It also has it also has a few speculative articles on known xenomorph creature or xenos creatures, and
So
certain
possible origins of where it
possible origins have been pulled out of what information he has, given that he is a biological specialist.
Mm-hmm.
He's given that to you as well. And there's a few other files on there that are similar information on local geography and seismic activity in the past. They all relate.
Okay.
So it's all useful information.
All right. Okay. Before I leave, I want to have a look inside these tanks.
Oh, the ones that are arranged around the walls.
Yeah, I'm slightly suspicious, just in case this thing, because we're not sure what it was, just in case
It was grown in a
it was
tank.
grown in a tank. Yeah, exactly.
He's made it and flushed it, and it's come on next door.
Oh no, sewer gators.
You take a look round. Around about a third of the tanks are empty of anything but liquid.
Okay.
The others do contain various creatures. Most appear to be preserved specimens.
Okay.
The majority seem to be local wildlife as such.
Okay, so nothing that would cause alarm.
Some of the undoubted mutations to some of the specimens are unusual, but not outside known the known for a hive world.
Okay.
Any
Alright.
creatures that live at the very bottom of the hive, where everything gets flushed to, have a tendency to change just from the amount of chemical and possibly chemical radioactive
stuff.
waste that is just flushed down deeper and deeper until it reaches the bottom and ferments.
Okay.
Apart from that, there are a few other creatures which you don't recognise. You certainly haven't seen anything on this world. Some of them don't look like they would survive on this world. There's a couple of creatures that would look more at home in trees. Certainly no trees left on this world.
So nothing resembling.
Nothing resembling this. They all tend to be relatively normal, relatively local. One
Local
local
delicacies.
probably local delicacies on a certain person's
We need to
barbecue
flag that right
pit.
down, don't we? Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah, there doesn't appear to be anything particularly untoward, and certainly nothing that resembles what you saw or you have picked evidence of.
Okay. Well. Okay. So I'm gonna leave, but I'm gonna kind of slowly shuffle past some more of these
Displays.
display cabinet things. Yeah. I'm still dead intrigued about what all that's about.
You make your leave. You make sure to take a look at a few more of the cabinets on the way. The majority of them seem to be nothing. They don't look anything more than old corroded metal and bits of maybe the odd collection of cogs. Some cases, bundles of wiring going in and out of sort of metal, or in some cases what look like ceramic cases.
What about the one where the cog pattern appeared on the plinth, and the device itself didn't it respond to that at some point as well? The LEDs were flashing.
There was a certain amount of it did seem to react to something. That one now it just seems to be sitting quiet. There doesn't seem to be anything active apparent about it, but it's quite hard. It was one of the ones in a power field, so it's a little bit distorted by the effects of the field.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna head out then and go and meet these guys and look over the data slate.
You sort of make your way across. The square is cleared quite a bit by the time you leave the temple, and it's fairly easy crossing. There's still groups of people around, and there's talking. There's still quite a large group around the statue who appear to be in prayer. But it seems to be getting quite late in terms of the local sort of normal time cycle, although the light level hasn't really changed, so it's quite hard to judge that. But it seems quieter generally. You can't hear as much background noise around, just that sort of constant echo of people and machines moving and the sounds from factories that would echo inside the sort of the dome. It's all died away slightly, and it's a little bit quieter. It's noticeable, but not. It hasn't gone away. And as you make your way across, you find that most people are sort of anyone who sort of get too close to sort of moves out the way, just sort of partly seems to be quite respectfully, but there's definitely a few double takes, and a few people seem to just. They don't make the sign of the Aquila across the chest, but they do seem to sort of they seem to make a symbol with their hand as you pass, as they sort of move out of the way, and it seems to almost be reflexive.
What is the symbol?
What's the symbol? Yeah, what is it?
The symbol. What they're actually doing is they're sort of one hand is they flatten out one hand and then bring one thumb over like that.
Half eagle.
The half eagle.
But I don't know what that is, do I?
And it's something you may have seen people doing.
People
but
do it for good luck.
So it's like the Aquila, but only half
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
half. It's called
Yeah.
thumbing your palm. It's like that.
yeah.
Because it looks like half an eagle.
Do I know what the significance of this symbol is?
You would probably recognise it as something that those of the Imperial faith do from time to time.
So it's a normal gesture.
It's
not
a relatively
It's
normal
like us doing
gesture.
this.
Okay,
Fingers
alright.
crossed.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, fair enough. All right.
So, while you've been sort of leaving the temple, the rest of you have obviously re-entered the temple, and now that there's just a few people moving about, generally sort of clearing up a little bit, there's quite a few. There's wood, obviously splinters of wood everywhere, and the floor. Part of the floor is still sagging where this thing sort of punched its way through. And you are all sort of drawn, I guess, to this hole in the floor.
Time to go spelunking.
I know we established that the traders were mostly in the previous square. So there's nowhere really to have an impromptu barbecue.
No.
Not unless you want to set one on the floor.
Well, you just said that there's wood splinters everywhere.
Yeah.
But I don't
Made of
know.
wood.
Yeah.
Well, let's go and have a look in the hole.
Are there any other ecclesiarchy people? Is it just him? Who's
There seems to
or
be there's the people moving about seem to be the ones in the sort of the blue, and they've managed to pull brooms out, and there's a couple of the men handling larger chunks. There's one person who seems to be who's looking at the largest chunk of floor, the one that went flying through the air with the Aquila sort of section on it. It seems to be investigating how best to remove it from the wall where it seems to have wedged itself in one of the corners.
Whilst they're investigating, can I go and offer my services to aid the staff around the temple?
Yes, if you if you approach any of them, they will quite happily accept any offer of help that you wish to make. If you wish to help sweeping up, they have brooms and cleaning equipment. Or there are a few dead and injured who will need to be laid out and prepared for burial.
The dead ones. The
Fair
injured
enough.
ones I'll probably make
Not
dead
my
if I
job.
tried that.
Yes, they direct you to a particular one of the more elderly, one of the more elderly sort of looking of the sort of these temple, these lay preachers, we'll say, who when you approach him sort of just nods to you and sort of points out, doesn't say anything, just points out certain bodies and sort of gives you a look that says you know exactly what you need to do.
Yeah,
We should get on.
I'll get on with some prayers and whatnot with the bodies.
Fair enough.
I have a lot less interest in going anywhere near / down that hole. But looking at the floor and how it's kind of bucked upwards.
Mhm.
From if I kind of walk around in the area, can I work out like how much of the floor is hollow, or if there's any like if it's a solid footing, or if it's actually just burst through? Like, does it come through ground as well as floor, or what's the like foundation?
What you can see through it appears to be the top of stone vaulting
Okay,
and pillars,
right.
suggesting that
Like a crypt.
at
There is a
least something
downstairs.
like
Or
a
there was.
crypt or similar is that at least where this thing has come up, there is some sort of
kind of a structure.
underground structure.
Was it flooded, or was it just because there was wet? But was that just from
That seemed to be it. It seemed to
Okay.
be a sort of. It just seemed to have this sort of gleaming wetness to it. You can certainly see where the floor's gone. You can see what appears to be the edges of a stone vault, suggesting that this thing punched through the stone of the vault, and that is what the floor rests on. At least in that area.
Could it be the miracle tomb?
A miracle tomb.
Can I shine a torch down it?
Yep.
No, I'm gonna.
You can see it's probably about maybe 15 feet down to what appears to be the next floor level, and it looks like it's stone, maybe slightly broken stone, but it appears to be stone flagged flooring, and you can see that as far as your torch shines, you can't see a wall as such. You can see sort of space. You can see further gaps and pillars, suggesting it's quite a large space underneath.
Is there an easy way to climb down?
If we ask them, there might be stairs down to the crypt.
Oh yeah.
But is there a way?
There's
an easy way down?
There seems to be sturdy enough parts of stone that you could drop onto the top of the edge of the vaulting and tie something off to that, and then drop down if you want to. The other thing that your light shows is the remains of the creature, sort of semi-splattered across the floor under the
Soft
hole.
landing.
Am I here yet?
You haven't arrived yet,
Okay. Right.
but
Okay. Are any of the people in blue robes around?
yes, there's still plenty. It's getting on for nearly a dozen of them.
I'll
around
literally just
the
address
temple.
the closest one and go, are there stairs down to the crypt?
The figure sort of bows to you and goes, yes, sir, there are stairs. If you wish, I can show you.
Yes, please.
Convenient. Almost too convenient. No, I'm joking.
What, that they have a downstairs and a way to get to it?
Yeah.
Please.
He's not wrong. That is convenient. Less convenient not to.
And if you wish, please follow me. I will show you down to the crypt if that is your wish.
Yes, if you could just show me to the stairs.
Fair enough. He leads you sort of away from the hole towards the right hand end of the building, and to one of the doors in the wall. You enter at this point to see Lex with one of the blue robes walking across to the sort of heading across the floor towards one end of the building.
I'll go with Lex as well.
Okay.
All the guns in one place.
You've got
Guns.
beast knowledge.
Allegedly.
So I'm going to bring the data slate
Yeah.
over to you, so we can. So
All
perhaps
the
we can.
Xenos
You
stuff.
can, see if any of
Alright.
the information in
Galva
there.
is going to be kind of having a general look around the rest of the place, and probably has gotten the general gist of, well, this isn't going to happen anytime soon. So, because she's still got her knife with like this lump of flesh stuck on it,
Yeah.
and she's walking around and this is going to be dripping, and it's like, so she'll sigh, tip it off, wipe the blade on her trousers, and just be like, and then continue like having a look around and whatever. Probably about when you arrive. So yeah, thunk.
Fair enough. Yeah, there is a sort of wet slapping sound as Garvin tips this piece of meat off the end of a
Sigh.
The lay preacher leads you across to a door and leads you through into the sort of the spaces at the other end. This area seems to actually have a fairly sort of room. This isn't open like the rest of it. There are rooms, there's corridors, and he leads you and he takes onto sort of what seems to be a main corridor that runs front to back along the building in this section, and leads you towards the back of the building, and to a sort of a door, quite an old looking. This one is actually a wooden door, which he sort of isn't locked. It's a simple latch. He unlatches for you and opens and sort of bows to you and goes, "The entrance to the crypt, sirs. Please feel free to take as much time as you need. There are torches at the base of the stairs, should you require them. Thank you, and may the Emperor protect you." And he turns and heads.
The Emperor
back.
protects.
Shall we?
He is. I will, once the guy's out of, moved away a bit, I will fox to the team, more accurate, that we are proceeding into the crypts, and I will describe the way we were shown to get there.
The door squeaks as we open. Okay.
You can see sort of very, 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 very worn out looking glow globes lighting the way down the stairs. They don't give out a huge amount of light, and it's quite obvious these are old. Stone flagged stairs heading down. It seems to be a perfectly straight staircase, but it does look worn and a little bit
Past its best.
past its best.
I will actually pull out my pistol and affix my torch to the pistol, because if that thing came from down here, I'm not taking a chance.
I still got my auto gun out, so.
Fair enough.
You can, like in trapdoor, still plasticine worms everywhere.
You can, if you can head down. It's a safe enough descent. There's enough light, especially with the torch, to see by. As long as you're careful, you shouldn't slip, or it's still solid enough that it's not going to be a danger to your footing.
Does it look like it's been used recently?
It looks like it gets a certain amount of use.
I'm guessing this was part of the underhive before they built the temple on top of it.
Yeah, I was just trying to establish if the crypt was in use.
There could be miles of tunnels down here. There probably is miles of tunnels there. So we'll have to get our tracking heads on to try and track where this thing came from. So we should find the corpse first and work backwards.
Yes.
So as you descend into
We really need a tracker down here, don't we?
an ever increasing, it's getting darker the deeper you get down, just simply because the lights aren't working so well, and you're starting to feel a bit damper and colder as you head down.
I'm wearing no shirts.
You're certainly
Why are you wearing
feeling it.
Because I look tougher without a shirt.
Oh, I see. Doesn't seem sensible, though, does it?
Well, they're gangers, aren't they? None of them are sensible. They've chosen a life of crime instead of serving the Emperor. Yeah.
As you sort of help move those sort of various the injured, it's quite obvious that obviously most of them have been injured largely by either splinters, very large splinters of wood impaling them, or they seem to be crush injuries from
when he fired his autogun.
people, or in some cases, it's crush injuries from being hit by other bits of debris.
Or people.
Or people. As you're sort of moving them, they seem to be laying them out on a stable part of the floor in sort of rows.
Can I, as I'm going about my business, as long as it's not too odd looking, to just kind of check over the body for any marks or any sort of signs of cult type markings?
It's one of those things. They seem to be sort of generally preparing them. So, and they do seem to be sort of checking to see if they recognise who they are. And in some cases, they're taking personal effects out and laying them by the body. And in other cases, they're taking them out and they're piling them to one. They're placing them to one side on a table that's sort of against one of the walls. So they seem to know who these people are and who may have family who will be looking for them and who might not. Yeah. But you can. It certainly doesn't look out of place for you to just while you're tending them. You notice they're pretty much all definitely locals to this level. The clothing is quite worn and often damaged and has been repaired. It's generally quite rough. It's mostly work clothing. Generally, you don't find they have a huge amount on them. Maybe a small amount of cash. Some of them have got Aquila symbols on like necklaces, or this particular world seems to have something for votive bracelets in various forms, and you find several that appear to be machined, like punched steel from leftover steel of interlocking pieces that make up Aquila symbols. And there's quite a few people quite a few of the people you tend to seem to have at least one of these, and there is at least one person who seems to have them all the way up their arms. They've actually got different sizes on, so they seem to almost encase their lower arms in these things. And they often have prayers to the Emperor machined into them. Apart from that, there's only one that really stands out, and there's one person who's a little bit better dressed than everyone else, who you find relatively close to the hole. It looks like, from his injuries, it looks like he was hit by that large piece of floor, and as it flew, it's basically torn across his shoulder, opening up the top of his chest, and it looks like someone's taken almost like a chain weapon to him.
Oh dear!
It's literally ripped him open, but you can tell it's full of wooden splinters, so it's obviously part of the floor's done this.
But I had some medical skills.
And it's sort of where he's lying, sort of one arm's washing blood, but you can see from the rest of his clothing, it's slightly better quality. The materials are better than anything you've seen on this level. And he has a few bits of jewellery. He has a couple of what look like signet rings. He also has this sort of votive bracelet, but instead of machined steel, his one appears to be either copper or polished brass. And the quality of it's a bit finer. And when you pat him down, there's a sort of jingling sound on his belt that suggests that he's carrying considerably more ready cash than most of the rest of the locals would ever consider carrying on their person if they even had that much.
Okay.
But you haven't noticed anything cult related.
As I'm going about trying to tend to his wounds as best I can, I'll just kind of do some prayers and say, like, there may be pain in this life where the Emperor protects, but his body is your body, our bodies are his, and in the afterlife he will shepherd our souls, and so on. And then I'll can I ask him if are you a devotee of the Emperor's Light?
You don't get much reaction. There's a sort of there's a flicker that suggests he is out, despite the sort of soaked sleeve of blood. There's a suggestion that he is still alive. You can see a heart, a sort of a gentle, slow respiration, and there's the odd bubble coming up in the wound, which is slightly worrying. But you don't get any response out of him. And when it becomes apparent that he is still alive, one of the other figures sort of comes across to you and helps you. Sort of.
Can I attempt medical skills without
I have Medicaid.
Oh, are you still up here? Or are you...
I'm here now.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
And Galva's just jogged me on.
What?
I wanted to give you the data slate, and you were just poking around the hole. So, yeah.
No, I said that I was here when you arrived.
Yeah.
Oh, soz. Oh. I thought you'd snubbed me.
No. No, just waiting.
The
Bug, come help. This man needs your help.
I don't know how Medicaid
The
works,
Emperor's
so
name.
what do I do?
Intelligence check.
yeah,
Okay.
it's again.
Red stuff
it's
stays on the inside.
It's a skill test again. It's a test against the skill.
So I get... Oh, I've got Medicaid trained, so it's just intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Can I attempt to remove splinters?
There's a lot. You can attempt it, but you might be there
He's
sometime.
not well.
He looks a bit poorly. That's the best I can do. I'm
Oh,
afraid.
he looks poorly.
The fact that
Only failed by 7.
when you move him, sort of just to get a better look at the wound, you see the chest sort of heave, and there's this sort of spurt of bubbling blood comes up into the wound from further down in the chest, and you are fairly sure that something has punctured his lung, and he is...
Expiring.
It's unlikely without higher level medical attention than is probably available locally. Even if he did survive, he would be seriously crippled because the chances of the wound ever healing cleanly are very slim. There's not a huge amount you can do to help this man, I'm afraid.
Going to set up some candles around him and get my charm out. Chant away. Chant his soul off to the Emperor.
You sort of stand up and nothing you can do. And
Is there any sort of mercy type things? Would that be bad to do?
it
Do I
would
know?
certainly not be unknown.
Okay.
And if you spent any time in the military, which
No.
or around the
from-
military,
Just from a high flood.
no, certainly military chaplains would be no
I'm
stranger
probably
to
fairly
it.
used to people being harsh to people that are
Yeah.
crippled or not
could
looking
ask
in
it.
a-
If someone's dying and they're
Good
in
way.
pain,
Yeah.
it's quite
I'm
common to
gonna
grant
go
the
for-
Emperor's mercy.
Or
Giving
you
him
could
mercy.
say that the Emperor is suffering and you are closer to him by your suffering. So, fucking die. I like it!
Yeah, basically, I'm gonna
His
chant
suffering is
about
eternal,
how his
your suffering is
he
momentary.
suffered for the Emperor, and the Emperor will take his soul into the next realm and protect him.
The Imperium.
You see sort of the eyes flutter open as you're doing this, and you sort of see a slight focusing in one of the eye, sort of in at least one eye, and sort of the other arm sort of drags, sort of pulls it over, so it's sort of resting on his chest, and he manages to make the sign with one hand across his chest, and you think it's sort of his hand sort of probably spasming on his chest at this point, and it's sort of tapping away at his chest, and then you sort of see the light just fade out of his eye, and sort of the chest stops moving, and the eye sort of gently glazes over.
I'll kind of raise his other hand up so he's in a Aquila pose and kind of just check if there's anything in his under his shirt, or I don't know
You can
if he was like
you can
doing
feel something there. You can feel something on his chest, or maybe it's something strapped to his chest, or something sort of under the shirt.
Go on.
Got the
Take
shirt
it.
away, and there's a timer.
Yeah.
Fuck!
Oh, not again.
I want to try and find out what it is.
There's a
but,
smaller
like,
person.
as much as I can, just try
Hello.
and make it look like I'm
Homunculus.
holding his hands. And
You
then
you
try
you,
and,
you have
like,
a
saying
sort of
prayer
you move
or
his hands
something.
about, and you just sort of have a feel, and it feels like there's something thin, sort of and solid, sort of running down the centre of his chest. It's probably only about 3 or 4 inches long.
I attempt to.
You can
move it,
attempt
or-
if you wish to attempt
see
to
what
remove
is.
it surreptitiously.
Yeah.
You give me a
Sleight of hand.
yeah. Have you got sleight of
Nick it,
hand?
Liam.
No, of course I don't.
I
What does
believe
it
in
even
you,
come
though.
under? Is that an
Agility,
advantage?
Agility.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's basic.
It is a basic one, yeah.
Oh no,
Silent move is basic.
it's over here. It's on the right hand side.
Shadow.
Okay, so no, it's a
Half of your agility.
advanced one.
Yeah, it's
You can take a
Anyone that's got sleight of hand.
Do you do it like half the skill or something if it's advanced? Or
No, you can't do it.
You can't do it at all.
No,
Yeah.
you have to have the skill trained to do
mean-
advanced ones. Give me if you got search is a basic one.
There's deceive. Search. Yeah.
If you want to try and deceive the people around you, you go for a deceive test.
Look over there.
Yes. I'm going to try and deceive them with my prayers and.
That you're not.
Yeah. my
searching
hand
the body.
movements.
Believe.
Fair enough.
Can you believe?
No, not quite. 1 degree. That's a bit.
Okay, you feel out. You sort of manage to. Well, you basically the shirt seems to button along the front. You manage to get your hand inside it, and you can feel what's there. And you sort of. It appears to be something hung on a chain or a cord around the neck, and with a sort of tug, you feel it come loose. It's probably been damaged up on the shoulder or the neck. And it comes loose in your hand, and you sort of pull it out and just tuck it into your robe.
Okay. Can I, if he has any other personal effects, can I get them and put them next to him as
Yeah.
though I was taking stuff off of him and doing what they were doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
You pull out. There's quite a large money pouch,
I'm just going to leave it next to him.
and
Not suspicious at all.
and there's the few bits of jewellery which you remove and place next to him as well.
Okay.
Oh, we'll get nicked.
What?
Oh yeah, I forgot she's there.
So, you've been handed obviously the data slate, and Bug, once he has completed his ministrations of this person who unfortunately he has no ability to help.
So you've come in, palmed me the data slate, walked off to go and help him. So I'll be just like,
A lot of the stuff on there has very little meaning to you.
what is this?
The creature, do you recognise it? Does any of this information help you to identify what that thing was?
It's information. I don't know what half of this is.
Okay. So that's a no.
Like, what does that even say?
What about the sample that you took? Because what happened to that?
Oh, it's there. I point to the bleeding mess on the floor.
Do I still have any contact with the Magus? Am I able to kind of?
He's only across the road, isn't
He's
he?
only across the road.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I was wondering if I could kind of take one of the samples back into his lab and ask if they can.
Yeah, there's no reason why.
Is
you
it
can't.
important? I mean, how important do you guys think it is that we find out what this thing is? I mean, it's
Yes.
dead now, so
If you're going to cook it, I want some.
okay, we'll save you some. Okay, well, so I'm
Is
gonna.
that said over the com?
No, he's never right there.
Well, since you don't know, I'm gonna grab your sample that you took.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who looks like they might need medical attention before I do that?
Pretty much anyone who is left in here is far more in need of the priest's ministrations to prepare them for death than to get them back on their feet.
Fine, okay.
Anyone who was not badly enough injured to basically have been lying there for some time, gently bleeding out, has made it out the doors and has been dealt with outside.
Okay. All right.
Dealt with.
Triage is done. Anyone who is left alive is basically so far gone. They just haven't quite made it to the Emperor's light,
They just
Emperor's
don't
side
realise
yet.
they're dead yet.
Yeah.
Be sure to burn the foul creature once you are done with your tests.
Fair enough.
Well, obviously, otherwise it's not cooked.
Oh, that's a heresy.
Always thinking through your stomach. That's our Galva.
It's
Right.
fresh.
It is a poo monster though, so
So you burn it first.
true. Sterilisation. Yeah. Okay.
Being
Alright, so
said
I'm
over
gonna.
the comms, I'm just going to give
Well, we're
Crypt a
talking.
look of
No.
these people.
We're talking upstairs, so you might be able to hear us from your
Their voices
I'm not quiet,
No.
and he's over
We'll
there.
all just wave. Bye. Yeah.
Hi!
I'm
I'm in a hole!
You're gonna head.
gonna grab the glistening lumpet.
Yes, but what about the rancid meat on the floor? Sorry.
And I'm gonna head back over and just see if Magus can.
See if the Magus can help you.
Yeah, give us a hand.
Lumpet. Sorry.
The glistening lumpet. Yeah.
Did you want this back?
No, you can keep that.
Data slate goes into the coat. So, while this has been going on, you guys have made your way down. It seems to be quite a long flight of stairs for not that huge amount of height. But this does seem to go quite a long. They're not very deep stairs. It seems to be quite a long, flat, sort of relatively sort of shallow set of stairs. But eventually, you do come out into this what would be pitch black, dark space, which is currently lit by this sort of
Hole.
yeah, the sort of glow of light coming through the ceiling of through the floor to get to you, and it does sort of illuminate this really quite large underground space. You can't actually see how far it goes, but you would think that it covers the same area as the open central space of the temple. Would be a reasonable guess. There are sort of pillars every 20, 30 feet. They're quite slender, carved stone pillars, and you can see them. They obviously go up to this sort of stone vaulted ceiling, which you can see obviously the remains of the thing through, and you can hear the sound of voices echoing from upstairs.
Probably have a look around and see if we can find any evidence.
Were there in fact torches at the bottom of the stairs like that?
You did say
Chap
there was
said.
Yes, there are torches. There are effectively burning brand torches.
Oh. Enjoy.
We shall look for evidence.
Yeah. Basically,
enough.
we
Well,
want
the most
to
obvious-
investigate the scene.
The most obvious piece of evidence is directly under the hole,
Big old
the
corpse.
splash.
That's the
Yes,
obvious
but
one.
I'm interested to see where it came from.
I am also interested to see where it came from.
And potentially track it.
Do you
Fair
have
enough.
tracking?
Yes.
Ah, over to you then, sir.
Well, you can head over. You walk over. You discover sort of splash well beyond the area of light, sort of the actual light in the hole. The first intimation of that is when one of you takes a step forward and steps in something that goes squelch. Yeah.
I'm looking around. I've got a proper torch, so
So Griff, you probably stepped in something.
Ah, I've stepped in worse. I'm in the guard.
That's worryingly possibly true. So yeah, you as you approach, it's obvious that you approach this creature. It is now, the smell is quite impressive. It is not just the smell of the creature when it was alive, but it seems to be, there's a smell of rot about it that seems to be quite pungent.
it smells like it's been dead for longer than it has, or
Either that, or part of it was really quite dead and rotting at the point you even saw it before. But certainly something smells like it's been dead a while. And there's also a really, almost chokingly strong smell of... it's this sort of weird irony. You can always taste it in the back of your throat, and you can sort of smell it. and it's this sort of really deep, thick, sort of clotting smell.
Like blood, or
It certainly it smells like blood, but this sort of is heavy. The smell and taste of it is almost getting to be overpowering. You can feel it sort of almost like coating the back of your throat as you're breathing. It's quite uncomfortable and quite horrible smell, but there's definitely something bloody to it. Yeah. Possibly blood that's been around a while.
okay. Can we look around for
A pathway.
where the
Where it
thing
came
came from?
If you want to take search tests, or
I do want to take a search test,
Yeah.
Lars.
8.
I failed.
Search on perception. That's 3 degrees.
There you go. That's why I brought the cop.
I think it's the flickering of the torch of the flame light. It means that you're having trouble distinguishing.
Didn't up my stats much, but I've got
Stats
a lot of
keeping you warm.
skills.
Yes, that's
We'll
true.
need it.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it is quite. It's cold and damp, but then there's this sort of horrible cloying to it as well. It's
Only spent 300.
not
on
the
my
nicest
skills.
place to be.
On my stats. Yeah.
But the air down here apart from that, the air down here feels a little bit cooler and cleaner than it has out in the. It doesn't have that sort of.
Bloody, rotting.
Well, it has that, but it doesn't have the sort of smell that pervades the rest of the dome. It doesn't have that sort of dusty, pollution-y taste thing to it. It's actually down here. You'd get a feeling it would be quite sort of cool and quite clean air. Actually, maybe a little bit dusty, but certainly nothing compared to the sort of levels above. Apart from the fact that it's got this corpse in it, which is doing horrible, horrible things to.
So,
Everyone.
Bug's going back to the other
Mhm.
temple.
Yep.
And then Gaius is still sorting out
Yep.
stuff
Still
over
looking
there.
at bodies.
Lex and Griff have gone downstairs. And this data slate makes no sense. So, I might investigate some stairs and follow those
Follow
guys.
these guys.
Yep.
Fair enough. Lex's searches bear a little more fruit, however. And as you move around, you spot. It seems to be, considering everywhere, it's a little bit damp down here. There's definitely what looks to be a very wet patch, sort of off to one side. It's almost. It's not slippery, but there's definitely quite a
Damp.
sheen of water.
Okay.
It's almost like standing water. The sort of, and as you shine your torch on it, you can see it almost like a trail of it heading off into the heading off to one. You've come from the right hand end down. You're in the middle, effectively. This seems to be heading off towards the left hand end of the temple.
Okay.
Well, we should probably follow it, but do you think we should get the others here as backup?
We should certainly get Galva
Footsteps.
beast to her thing.
thing.
Okay. I will turn around, gun raised, pointing at where the noises come from.
Oh, come on, really?
Given what's been happening today, you can't be too sure.
I'm sure it'd make more noise if one of those was upstairs. What you found?
We think we found where it's come from.
Oh, great.
So our plan was to track it. We think you could be useful.
Oh, thanks.
I will come up to Gaius. Gaius, we found tracks for the beast. Do you want to join us?
I'll come up to Bug saying, Bug, we need your auspex. Come down here.
You get this message about halfway across the square.
Does anyone seem at all concerned that we're going down there?
Not really. Everyone else seems to be giving the hole a fairly wide berth. To be
It's like, well,
honest,
they'd be crazy.
pretty
Oh, it's
much.
an evil hole.
Is the
She's
shepherd
willed off
guy
word
still
is-
around?
off
or is
No,
on
he
the
he
ghost.
seems to he's vanished off somewhere. It seems to be basically they seem to be working on the basis you killed this thing.
You obviously know what you're doing.
You obviously
It's
know
fine.
what you're doing.
How
You
little
are
they know.
you are obviously you've been
Probably
described
think
as
you're a witch hunter. or
you've
something.
been described as pilgrims, but yeah, they probably assume that you're some sort of ecclesiarchy team or group.
Oh, we're his bodyguards, right? Or at least you guys are. Wasn't that the...
He's a ganger.
Witchfinder is what they call him.
Yeah.
I said I was on a pilgrimage and it brought them with me. But not
Yeah,
really
yeah.
bodyguards, just guys who wanted to.
It's the they would probably
actually
assume that
just,
you are
Drum and bass
you
band.
are more than you seem, and it's
Travelling
probably
the
best just to
galaxy.
stay out of your way. Whatever you are, you killed this thing. You're dangerous enough to just be left to it, and you seem their shepherd seems to think that you are here with as some sort of manifestation of the Emperor's will to protect them. So just let you get on with it.
Well, they're kind of right.
Kind of. The Emperor does work in mysterious ways.
You know, just they're possibly thinking about the wrong hand of the Emperor. That's all.
Yeah.
I kind of want to stick around and try and
Keep
sort of
it.
in-debt myself. Or add myself.
Well, that's fair enough.
In-debt yourself.
Get yourself
I wanna
basically.
Ingratiate.
Ingratiate. That's what it does.
Yeah, ingratiate yourself with the
Yeah.
locals.
I've
Okay.
become a bit of a part of the temple, if possible. I want to try and get in with the shepherd and you know, like
Any help that
aid him in his recovery or something.
any help that you offer around the temple is more than graciously received.
So I'll stick around upstairs for, let's say, an hour or so at least.
Okay.
If they don't come back by that point,
Just
or they're on comms.
Yeah, they're on.
as long as they're still talking to me. If they need me.
fair enough. There's more than enough work to be getting on with for several hours before they even get to the point where they then have to start wondering how the hell they filled the hole in the floor in. So there's plenty for you to do up there. What are you going to do then, Bug?
How soon do you guys need me? Have I got time to just kind of deliver the lumpet, or do I need to come right away?
If you're just dropping it off, it won't make much difference in time.
Just find us after you dropped it off.
Yeah. Okay. So
We'll leave our comm channel open. Just track our comm beads.
the Magus was.
You'll want a torch.
Pardon.
You'll want a torch.
Unless you can see in the dark, he is a tech priest.
And I have indeed.
Yeah, but I don't know about tech priesty wibble.
Tech priesty. Really. Can I communicate with the Magus at this point? Could I kind of let him know that I'm coming and dropping something off for him?
As you approach the temple, the door automatically opens for you.
Swish.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
that pad you stepped on.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go in and just leave it in his lab then.
When you
On
enter,
his desk.
Yeah.
when you enter the lab,
Got
he
your present.
is there, sort of at one of the sort of various bits of machinery,
Okay.
and he does sort of look up, and there's a brief sort of blurt of noise as an acknowledgement and a welcome back, and a slight question, a sort of polite request as to why, your return is.
What is that?
Well, no,
What is this disgusting?
It's actually it's a surprised request as to your return so soon.
Yeah. Thank you for the information on the data slate. Unfortunately,
It was really useful.
we were unable to identify what this creature may have been. However, we do have a sample, and given your skills in bioengineering, we thought perhaps if it's not too much trouble, you may be able to assist us.
He immediately sort of leaves this machine running and sort of comes over to you quite fast, and sort of from behind him about 3 McKendrites sort of wangle away, sort of come out from under these robes, and he sort of appears in front of you and sort of bends over this sample you're holding, and sort of various McKendrites start prodding at it.
Oh, cheeky! All right.
And he seems quite interested, and he's sort of quite engrossed, and then sort of the McKendrites.
His McKendrite is poking your lumpet.
The McKendrite sort of picks up. 2 of the McKendrites pick up this piece, and he sort of it sort of just sort of lifts up over his head, and he sort of becomes aware of you again.
He's like, oh yeah.
And he goes, of course, brother. I will attend to it immediately. It is most interesting to have a complete unknown. I haven't had a new sample like this for quite some time. Thank you very much. I will please, if you leave me a comm frequency on which you can be contacted, I will let you know my findings straight away, of course. Okay. The sooner we can find what this item is, what this creature is, the better. For one is bad enough, but a breeding party, say, would be a danger to the entire dome, and would have to be dealt with. Yes, dealt with. I just should check the chemical sluices. That is a good point. Yes, I'll contact you soon. And sort of turns away with sort of his concentration sort of seems to be on this piece of meat that's now sort of being held by three McKendrites in front of him, and
Sorry,
sort of seems
Galva.
to be peering
You're
at
gonna
it
miss out.
On lunch.
as he's
spoken for.
he's sort of, I wouldn't say he's hurrying because he doesn't obviously appear to have any legs, but he's certainly sort of moving with greater.
Swift.
He's moving with greater intensity than you've seen him before. He seems
He is
quite
keen.
animated and keen.
Oh. Okay, all right. Oh, thank you, Magus. I don't think he's listening anyway. I'm just going to go.
Just write
I
down
don't
our
think he
combi
cares. Oh,
signal.
yeah.
Put it on the desk.
Yeah. Can I write? I probably can
Yeah.
write. Do we have pencils? I don't know.
If nothing else, you can probably input it into his.
Combi channel called Blatantly Not the Inquisition. Honest Gov.
Oh, would you be able to tell from that?
Probably
Would you be able to
not.
determine from the frequency?
Probably not.
What you give him?
Yeah.
It's just like a radio.
Do you
It'd
just
be-
give him like your personal one,
Yeah.
or do you just give him the
Channel
one?
that
Like a
we're
Rayman
on.
address.
The
What's that?
it's
Yeah,
one
I'd
of those
imagine
ones where
especially encrypted and all
unless it's encrypted, which your one probably doesn't have anything more than
Bug is great. Spelled with an
basic.
A. That's your combi channel.
At hotmail.com.
Very, very basic encryption. Nothing that would suggest anything special. It's just a closed network.
Okay.
It's not as though it's so secure. It's got even mid-level sort of imperial.
So it's not going to raise any eyebrows. Does he have eyebrows? I don't know. He hasn't got legs.
He probably hasn't got any anymore. It would be an unusual thing to leave behind.
He's put them on those fish things.
I replaced my entire body with
Except my
with
eyebrows.
mechanics, except my eyebrows.
I was very proud of my eyebrows.
Yes, they're very expressive.
Okay, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna leave him to it and
Head back
head
down.
back, yeah, and get once I'm there, I'm just gonna go down and join these guys in the crypt.
Are you guys waiting for him?
Yeah. Because he's only going
He's
to
got
be a
the
couple of
all
minutes.
This is true. While you're down there, is there anything, and you're waiting for Bug to come back? Is there anything else you particularly want to have a look at?
Yeah, so while we're waiting for Bug, I'm just going to investigate the area and look for anything that looks, I don't know, odd, out of place, dodgy,
It's
criminal.
Very empty,
Insert
which strikes you
things
as a
that
bit odd. It's a
crypts
crypt.
are normally used and have bodies.
They normally
and-
have something in them, but there is nothing in here. There are no rests. There's no statuary. There's no
tombs.
tombs. There isn't. I mean, apart from the basic shaping on the columns, there isn't anything carved into the walls. This is stone at this point still, but there's no relief works carved into the stone. It's just basic,
Not yet.
well fitted.
Galva was here.
Sort of well-fitted masonry. But there is very little else.
No markings on like the walls, floors, ceilings.
No, it's almost it's basically it is as smooth and clean as the original masons made it. It doesn't even appear to have been a huge amount of movement down here that would suggest worn stones, like worn parts in the stone. It's still quite smooth and pristine.
How dusty is the ground? I mean, does it look like people come down here relatively regularly?
It looks like there are people who do come down here. It looks like it might be swept because there doesn't appear to be a huge amount of dust. but it is quite damp as well. Not apart from this obvious water you found, it isn't running water down the walls or anything. It's just a little bit cold and wet feeling in the air. That's all.
Like a cave.
Are there like brackets or anything on the sides?
There are a few around the walls, but there don't appear to be any on the pillars. And where they are, they seem to be very well spaced on the walls. Any lighting wouldn't be very efficient down there, let's put it that way. Realistically, apart from the body of this creature, there is the only thing that's sort of within reasonable sort of distance of the light that you can see. There's one bit of carving, which is on. You can see it on the pinnacle of the vaults of the roof, where you can see ones that are still there. And it seems that at the stone that holds it all together has is decorated, and they seem to be carved with sort of skeletal features, almost like a carving of a skull. But that seems to be the only thing, and
that's not unusual.
There's something. there might be something sort of carved onto them, but it's. I mean, these would appear to be actual size. These are sort of human size, and they're 15 foot up, so they're not big, and they're not really clear from where the sort of distance you're at. It's you can make out possibly stuff scratched, other markings scratched onto them, but you can't really see what they are. At least not without something to help you.
Alright, I will make a note of where they are.
There seems to be one in the centre of every.
Get out your notepad.
There seems to be one in the centre of every sort of. Well, it's the top of every point
Archway?
of the archways.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the fulcrum.
Yeah.
Okay. I will wait for Bug, because does Bug have bionic eyes? I can't remember.
Eyes. His eyes.
No, I don't think I do. They are black.
Alright, well.
I don't know what I was before I was a
Human.
Was I human? So they probably are.
Yes.
They're not human
If you
eyes
weren't, you
then,
would have
are
been
they?
shot.
They're not human eyes then, are they? If
Oh.
they're black.
I've got
I don't know.
eyes.
The galaxy is very varied.
It's true. We are talking. Yeah.
I mean, millions of planets, countless billions of people.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Halflings.
Humanity has developed a few oddities that aren't completely obvious
Yeah, I mean,
mutations.
the environments that people have lived in have changed how they look, like the purple
Like a
eyes.
So that's
Sorry?
a
Like
no
a
to
void.
bionic
Yeah.
eyes then. But I do have Auspex.
Yes.
Next best.
Yes, so yeah, that's why I was going to wait for
The
Bug.
Fair
tracker
enough.
from Aliens.
Well,
if you've
Bug,
seen it.
you make your way back
It's in the
down, and you can hear sort of quiet talking emanating up from the hole.
Probably flashes of light from down there. as I'm
And
looking
yeah, you
around.
can see sort of flashy. You can see sort of a certain amount of light down there, so you know where you're headed.
Okay.
You make your way down there without any incident. There's a few less of the. There's a few less people moving around, but you do see Gaia still moving about, helping with the the sort of locals out.
Do I know where the entrance to the crypt is?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I
you-
did describe it.
Okay.
It's been described, so you have no trouble finding your way there.
Okay. Down I go.
So Bug arrives with you.
Alright, I will point out the skulls to Bug. I don't know if your Auspex can pick it out, but the skulls have markings on them.
Okay. Can I kind of magnify and see if I can?
You can see if you can
Look at
get
these markings.
some sort of scan of them.
Deca use. What did you roll?
34, but I've got
Oh.
+10 on tech use.
Ah.
So yes,
Passed.
passed by half a degree.
You manage to get. You focus it in. You manage to get. The Auspex takes a very basic scan of it and saves it. It can't display it, unfortunately.
It's there for later.
But
What
it is
are you
there for
looking
it.
at?
There's markings on the skull engraved up there. I can't make out what they are, and I will basically point the torch at it so you can see what I'm looking at.
Anyone want to try and make it out?
Yes.
Deception checks for anyone having a look.
Wouldn't it help if you were closer?
I believe in the Emperor. 20. And my perception's 32, so I've got a degree.
Why, do you want to climb up?
Maybe. There's not a lot to climb on.
It's alright, we've got a scan of it. We
Make
can
a
always
human
check
pyramid.
later.
Human pyramid.
We can always come back and check later. Let's follow the slime trail.
3 degrees. You're fairly sure that there has been something carved. There's definitely something carved onto effectively the forehead of it, and it seems to be it's a symbol that's been carved on there that appears to be a very crude sort of hand shape.
Ooh.
It's not supposed to be there.
What, the skull?
No, the markings. The skull is supposed to be there. It holds up the roof.
What are the markings?
It's like a little handprint scratch.
Oh, common law Imperial Creed. Is that a recognised Imperial symbol?
Yeah, I can do that.
I got a 6!
Or in
Ah!
I won't be that. No.
There are
It's a hand.
countless images of hands used in various ways in the Imperium. However, they tend to be very carefully done because often the position of fingers and the hands in the configuration of hands has quite a lot of meaning. Roughly scrawled hands is not a normal thing for Imperial symbology.
Yeah, the stonework is very fine. If what Gal was saying and the hands are crude, it doesn't match what else is around.
I could do that.
My point. Right. I'll come up to Gaius that we found unusual markings down here, so he's aware of what's going on, and say that there's a crude I'll basically tell you there's a crude hand drawn on them, so you know what you could potentially be looking out for.
I was going to say, keep me appraised of your movements, so I would follow. Can I try and make my way through to the back of the temple towards wherever the shepherd's quarters would be?
You think that his stuff is probably in the left-hand wing, the sort of left-hand end, because that's the direction he walked in. There's a couple of doors on there, so you could go and investigate, see if you can find him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe talk to some of the
others on the way. Yeah, they're generally quite polite. They're all quite busy. They don't say a huge amount. It's mostly just fairly either basic instructions or basic answers to questions. But they do state that you do find out that the priest's lodgings are on the second floor up.
Okay.
So they're on the first floor of the building, in that left-hand end. If you go up, then if you carry on to the back of the temple, he has rooms on that floor at the back at that back edge.
Whilst making general conversation, can I mention that along the way here, some of the people that we encountered mentioned there had been some deaths in the area. I hope this has not been of your flock. I would want to see the Emperor's vengeance put upon anyone that was
There have been unfortunate deaths. Thankfully, our flock has not been touched. The Emperor's light has been protecting those.
I'm glad to hear this. Perhaps it is the Emperor's will that is striking down those who are unworthy if they are not part of your flock.
I would hope. I would hope that there has been no suggestion that those who have died have been anything other than true citizens of the Imperium and sons and daughters of the Emperor. They have simply not followed his light in our way. We have mourned the loss of their people, but we have thankfully been left untouched.
I'm sorry to hear that. I thought that it is a shame when a son of the Emperor dies. Or
it is a shame.
And,
it is a shame when any are called to the Emperor's light, but we must always hope that in his light they are reborn once again. And
yes, perhaps it was simply their time, their duties
it
lay
may
elsewhere.
be. We can only hope that their duties have not been cut short in his name.
I'm going to head off to the...
You're going to head through. You sort of make your way across and enter into the left-hand end. You enter in. There's a sort of short corridor that seems to open out into a longer cross corridor that goes front to back. There's obviously various rooms off it. If you have a look, it seems most of the rooms on this level are teaching rooms or prayer rooms, or seems to be one or two offices for... The offices are all deserted. It's obviously was full of the staff of the temple when it was in better days. But at one end, at the front end of the building, you do find a set of stairs that lead you upstairs. And you can head up. You can see that there is definitely lights glowing in the corridor above you.
Are there any sort of private areas where I can have a look at the thing that I've pinched?
Oh, plenty. There's hardly any. There's lots of these
Thing
rooms.
that I pinched.
There's
One
lots of
these
rooms.
abandoned offices.
Yeah, there's lots of the empty rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make sure you lock the door.
you can sort of stick your...
I'm just going to have a quick
look.
Not a proper full investigation.
You sort of draw it out of your own, and it's a simple leather cord, and on it is a is this long. It's about 4 inches long by an inch wide. It seems to be a lump of wood with a brass fitting for the cord to go through. And it has inlaid in it a brass design on one side, and on the other it seems to have embedded into the wood a sort of glass file or a little glass tube. It seems to be empty, but it's got this little glass tube sort of built into it.
Okay, I'll stash it away for later. I basically just want to watch the shepherd's room, or try and make myself busy around the area where that is, so I can see anyone going in or out
Fair
for
enough.
the next half an hour, and then I'll follow down to these
Fair
guys.
You head up onto the first floor, onto the floor. You can hear what seems to be voices coming from there. So you quietly make your way up the stairs. As you're heading up the stairs, you guys, I'm guessing, are setting out on the trail of this thing.
Yeah.
The slime trail.
Yeah, it's slime. There is a certain viscousy element in this water, like there's something sort of in it as well. But there's this definite sort of almost like trail of standing water on the stones, and it does sort of wend its way off into the darkness towards the left-hand end of the temple.
We'll follow it.
Is it a kind of... This is a kind of shallow... like level of water that's just sitting, or is it that's been kind of left behind by something passing?
It's not flowing in any way, so it looks like, and there is sort of little bits in it. There's little stuff in it that does appear to be like dragged.
Okay.
So it would suggest that this thing has come from excludes some sort of liquid, or come from somewhere wet.
All the dogs come out the river.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Or it came out of a tank.
Maybe, yeah, that's a good one.
Tanks are quite dry inside.
They do have tea making facilities.
Not a gun tank. I know what you meant.
Do they have tea makers?
British ones do.
Do they really?
Yes.
Wow.
British Army tanks have it as standard.
British Army tanks, yeah,
Well,
obviously.
they do because their soldiers before kept trying to jerry-rig them and it just kept going wrong.
Oh, I see.
So they just gave
These
up and put
kettles
them in there
which
for
are
them.
workouts.
Yeah.
That gets
Anywho.
relevant to-
Yeah. As you head, you follow it along, and as you sort of move away from the light, you can realise that your eyes start to acclimatise a little bit better to the sort of diffuse light, the gloom, and it's fairly easy to pick this sort of water out. It's quite of the sort of the gleam of it,
Yeah, it'd be shiny.
but there also seems to be, as you get further away from the light, you pick up there's a certain amount of almost little flecks of phosphorescence in the water. That as you get deeper into the dark, you start to be able to see it. It's this sort of very, very indistinct little glowing flecks in the water.
Is anything showing the specs?
Quick, use science.
Yes.
Meanwhile, poke it with a knife.
Pass by 1 degree. Does anything show on the specs?
No, not really. Nothing beyond background. A nice prod just basically leaves you with.
Disperses it.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly disperse it, but the sort of edge of your your weapon picks up a little bit of the water, and you can see a slightly drier patch. That's about it. You
Wipe
reach
out my trousers as well.
you reach the wall. You sort of come up to, and you start to see the wall, which is seems to run again the sort of width of the temple. This area is obviously seems to be the same as the footprint as the central area of the temple. And as you come up to this wall, you can see in it under. It's what you're fairly sure is the left hand end. As you come up to it,
expecting another set of stairs to go back up or further down?
you come to an archway. It's obviously designed to be there. It's built into the wall, and it's about 12 foot to the top, to the peak of this sort of Gothic shaped archway. No ornamentation at all. It's very, very plain. It's literally they have just cut the blocks into to match the shape, but it's been done with great skill and precision. It's very, very, very highly skilled stonework, but there is no ornamentation at all. But this trail seems to lead in through this archway into sort of what appears to be at least for a short distance, a tunnel.
Well, we'll keep following it.
You start to hear the echoes of your feet, and you're having to basically walk in this now. The sort of gentle splash as you head along it. It really
is it running?
No, it's just sat.
And
It
it's
seems
still
to-
got this suspended murk.
There's all sorts of little bits of stuff suspended in it.
detritus.
So it's just like a half-inch
Yeah, if that.
pool. Okay.
Yeah,
Or like a quarter-inch or centimetre of water.
yeah.
Okay.
It's very little, but it doesn't. There's nothing to move it. So and the floor is apparently still so flat. It's effectively just sat, and its own tension where it needs is basically just holding its edge. There's nothing to disturb it. As you walk through it,
Except us.
as you walk through it, you see it does sort of ripples out, and it starts to spread out a little bit, and areas of it break up, and where you step in it. But
Does it smell like the creature?
no, as you get further away, you can smell the sort of damp air. But the smell of the creatures sort of decreases as you get further and further away from it.
As we travel further, are there any more signs of the little scratched handprints on anything?
Or
Not
skull.
that you've
Or
seen.
similar.
The stonework is just very smoothly, very nicely cut. But there doesn't appear to be anything doesn't appear to be anything. And after maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes walking, you're fairly sure you're definitely out from under the temple by this point. You're out somewhere under probably under the streets surrounding the square. You start to see sort of basically something blocking the passage. And as you come up to it, it's quite obvious this has been walled off. This has been you come to effectively tunnel comes to a dead end.
Mm-hmm. Is it the same kind of stonework as the surrounding area, or is it a more recent addition?
It's the same sort of stonework. The quality is not quite as good as the original one, but it is still very, very well made.
I can blow it out.
Oh, excellent.
I've got a demolition charge.
Oh, excellent.
Let's not do that while we're in it.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah,
as you sort of stood in front of this, you all feel sort of water start to drip on you.
Oh god, it's an alien. Ah!
If you look up, there is a hole in the ceiling of this tunnel, and it is a perfectly circular, carved hole. You can see that it has been cut through whatever stonework was originally there, and there doesn't appear to be fragments of stonework on the ground. This looks like it has been, at some point after the place was built, has been cut out by something, and this shaft has basically just been cut down till it's reached the...
How tall is this? Is the ceiling still, 12?
No, the peak of the archway is probably only about 7 or 8 feet high.
Right.
So
could we climb the hole? Or is it too sheer?
It is very, very smooth. Very smooth.
We could probably go back to the surface and follow the route on the Allspecs.
It's slightly
can we get
rippled.
like a coordinate of where
In
we're
fact, actually, you can see the stonework is slightly rippled.
Like a plasma torch or something.
Maybe.
Or them transport rings at Stargate. Shing, 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 shing.
But yeah, we could probably just follow the Allspecs, go back to the surface, and follow the Allspecs to here.
If you unmark the position, it will be in the same place, just higher up.
Well, zip. Just checking.
I'm sure Bug can mark his spot on the Allspecs.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
I don't know what the Allspecs
It's like
can
Google
do.
Maps putting a little thing down.
Yeah,
I drop a pin.
It's
Handheld
it's a
computer
relatively
device.
high quality piece of equipment, so it has the ability to set markers, or if nothing else, you can probably get it to work out the coordinates or the planetary coordinates.
Okay.
And then you can return to that coordinate on a higher level.
All right, let's do that then.
Well, cool. We'll start the arduous journey
Were
back.
there any offshoots, or was it just a straight line?
Straight line.
So it's a straight line that leads to a dead end other than the hole going up.
Yep. Any of you've got common law war, haven't you?
Yes, I love the war.
Give me a common law war test.
To the war!
I also have common law.
3.
You can give me one as well.
A straight 3.
And actually,
10.
you can give me a...
That's better.
Common law mechanicus?
2 degrees of
I've got
success.
machine cult or tech.
Common law tech could probably do it.
2 degrees.
2 degrees.
4
Yeah.
degrees.
Ooh,
That'll do.
We all passed really well.
Your part. There's something very familiar about the rippling, and you realise, and it kind of all comes to you at once, and you all look at each other.
Large strike.
Not exactly, but a high focused. It is a high power, high focused laser or plasma beam has cut this.
Did it say plasma? Yeah.
Laser beam.
Lasers.
And whatever it's done, the hole is about probably about 8 foot across. It's most of the width of the tunnel, and this has been done as a single cut.
Is the floor affected in any way?
A single cut.
Oh,
so
it's
that's
really well
good.
focused then.
So that's a big energy weapon. I mean, that's bigger than a tank grade. No, bigger, much bigger. With 2 degrees, would I be thinking a ship-fired weapon?
Because it would affect the floor, wouldn't it?
You would assume it would be.
I mean, are we talking like the weapon on like a super heavy tank?
You would probably be thinking something possibly vehicle-based, but it would be like serious mining vehicle. As far
It's
as
directly vertical, right?
Yes.
So it's intentional.
Oh,
this
it's
isn't a
very
weapon that's
intentional.
gone astray and has gone through.
No,
This is
this
someone
is
meant to
highly
do
intentional.
this. Right.
And as far as you're concerned, the Adeptus Mechanicus is known for creating very large siege equipment. You have heard of such things as siege lasers.
Do I need to be talking to my boy Magus?
So it went up or it went down?
Are there any markings on the floor to suggest that it punched through, or?
There's nothing on the floor.
No. The floor is pristine.
So it was
Okay,
fired from inside.
Not necessarily. How high are the ceilings?
7 foot.
7 to 8 foot to the apex.
Realistically, a weapon of that size, I don't think would have enough space to
Oh, I
fire
see.
up. I think that came from above.
Well, let's go and have a look and see if we can find anything above.
Any light shining to the top of it just illuminates this up to a point where the torch doesn't reach anymore and it's dark.
To the surface world.
At
At least we can make it up with you, Liv.
Yeah. While they've been
Mucking about.
exploring,
Spelunking.
Glad it was a dead end. I don't have to catch up now.
You don't know that yet.
you guys, Liam, you make your way up onto the second floor, and you can hear it's a sort of dim light. It's lit, but it's a little bit flickery occasionally. The lighting's obviously taken a bit of a battering, and you can hear voices at the far end of the passageway. It appears to be 2 voices talking.
Okay, can I try and listen in, but without looking like I'm hiding or anything like that? Because I know I'll ruin that.
You can
If I can just
give me a
pretend to be
perception
doing
check.
something.
Give me a
like,
perception check first.
Checking through something. Passed. No, I failed by 2. Sorry, it's looking at the wrong stat.
2
Yeah,
or
by
2
2.
degrees.
No, just by 2.
By 2. You sort of creep along. You quietly sort of walk down the thing. The floors are these are padded floors rather than hard wooden floors. So your footsteps are quite quiet. And as you walk along, you basically trip over a broom. Give me an agility test.
I failed by 7. Just 7.
You trip over this broom and go basically headlong, thump on the floor with your legs tangled around this broom, and you hear the voices at the end of the corridor stop.
Pick up the broom.
Swear loudly.
Start sweeping.
Clever girl.
You sort of jump to your feet and you start brushing the floor with this broom, working your way along, and you can hear the voices sort of start up again at the end of the corridor, but they seem to be a little bit quieter this time, a little bit lower toned.
Cautious.
Yeah. You're going to sweep your way along the corridor, are you?
I'm going to maintain sweeping in the same spot for a minute or so, and sweep a little bit along the corridor, and then stop sweeping, but continue to move along the corridor.
Fair enough. You quietly make your way down the corridor. You get to the point where you can hear these 2 voices. You can just about hear what they're saying. It's not. You can hear the sort of tone of voice, and it appears to be. There's one quite deep, very very smooth voice but it sounds quite strained. And there's another voice. There's quite a low, quiet. It's quieter than the other one. You can't hear. You can only hear that. You can't hear what it's saying. The other one, you catch the odd word, and it's fairly just innocuous conversation by the sounds of it. but you know that you're only probably about 8 to 10 foot down the corridor from what appears to be a door where you can hear the voices coming from. So if you want to get any closer, you're going to have to really try to be quiet.
Can I see if the door's closed?
You can see it's closed.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get closer and...
You're going to try...
If I... Yeah. Well,
you're
I'll
going to
just
try and get closer.
then,
You can only try.
yeah.
Okay.
If I feel that I'm not doing very well, I'm just going to knock on the door.
Agility test.
Close. I've managed to fail by 4.
Failed by 4.
Can you adjust down with you?
Oh, yeah. I could do that.
Yeah? You always have the
let's
option.
give that a go.
So you passed.
Yeah.
You quietly pad up to the door, and it's a closed door, but you can. It's obviously quite thin, and from behind it you can hear this the murmur of conversation. And as you sort of lean in close to the door, you hear what you are fairly sure is the preacher's voice go, "We have no other choice. The temple is not usable. We have to find a way to repair it, and this is the only way. I know you don't like it, but how else are we going to be able to hold services? We can't hold them now. Half of the floor has fallen through to the crypt." There's sort of a murmur of the other voice. You still can't catch what it's saying, but you sort of hear this other the priest go, yes, I know it's not ideal. However, unless you can give me a better idea, this is all we've got. There's a sort of murmur. It sounds a sort of acquiescent sort of murmur.
I'm going to knock on the door at this point, I think.
Okay.
Before they start turning around or something.
Fair enough. Knock on the door and the voice is just cut off. And you can hear movement in the room behind it. Followed by, "Enter, my child."
I enter and with my trade valet, do my best to be sort of respectful and slightly like subservient or not,
Deferential.
Deferential. That's the word I was looking for.
Deferential.
That's the one. Yeah. And my brother, can I aid you in your recovery in some way? You must be injured from earlier.
You enter into the room, and it's a reasonably large room, with very little furniture in it. There's a fairly basic sort of pallet bed against one wall with what appears to be a small little table next to it with what looks like a closed triptych style shrine piece. There's a bigger table which is covered with a few books and some papers that has 2 or 3 battered old looking utility chairs round it. And apart from that, against one wall is another table which has been set up as a shrine to the Emperor. It's got a book on it. It has a small Aquila symbol, and behind it, quite a finely made image of the Emperor. It looks like it's a stamped metal piece, relief piece that's seems to have an image of the Emperor as the warrior, stood in sort of stylized power armor with a great spear in one hand, and appears to have some sort of creature in its other hand, like with its other hand round its throat, and is sort of there's a suggestion of a sort of halo of light around this sort of figure. But that's sort of all you can make out. And apart from that, and some slightly mouldery old wall hangings around the room, no windows, completely closed room. That's it. Apart from, at the table is sat the preacher, and stood just off to his left is another of the sort of local sort of temple guys in blue. But this guy is all in blue, but this one has a like a black sash or a black belt around his waist, where all of the everyone else has just had, they've had a sort of sash to hold the robes in place, but they've all been made of the same material. This one is quite obviously a different material, and it's black.
Okay. As I see both of them, I'm going to say, pardon my intrusion.
That is fine. Fine, my brother. Please come in. It is good to see another ordained man of the cloth here, especially after the events of today. Your arrival was timely, especially with the nature of your companions. Quite obviously, your pilgrimage has brought you through places and has found you companions of martial nature in the past, even though they now tread in the Emperor's footsteps.
Yes, how fortunate we are, and how the Emperor sends his divine blessing upon us.
In the form of gangs.
He turns and goes, "We will continue this discussion tomorrow. I should probably get some rest." The other figure sort of bows and turns and leaves, and you see it's quite a young, as it turns out, it's quite a young man, fairly heavily built. He looks like he's sort of got that heavy build of a manual worker, and you can see that he's got this sort of perpetual tan skin, where sort of on his hand, the backs of his hands and all over his face, that suggests he's spent a lot of time around probably furnaces or metal shops with lots and lots of heat, and he's now just been basically permanently lightly heat burnt. And it's
not fired a big laser recently, has he?
Well, it looks more like he's been out. He has that weathered look of someone who spent a lot of time in the sun. This world has probably not seen real sunlight apart from the upper echelons for thousands and thousands of years. It seems likely he's probably a foundry or a factory worker that's found another calling. He doesn't say anything to you, but he nods. He sort of, it's a fairly abrupt nod as he leaves, and he closes the door behind him as he walks out.
It was an inspiration to hear your teachings earlier, and I'm glad that we made our pilgrimage here. It would be my honour to attend you and aid you in your duties.
I would be most grateful for any help that you can give us while we are here. I fear that we are going to have greater trouble without the ability to use the temple, but we have been allowed to use the square outside for larger ceremonies, and if I speak with the local enforcers command, and if I speak with the Magus at the machine temple, there's a slight undercurrent there, I'm sure they will be amenable to allowing us to use it until we have the ability to fix the floor. But certainly any help you could give would be most appreciated.
One of the men with me has gone down to investigate the crypts to see damage and so forth, and make sure that there are no more of these creatures. Can I just kind of watch for any reaction to someone going into the crypt?
He sort of sort of nods and goes, "Truly you have been sent by the Emperor this day. I had not even considered that. I knew that the floor would be dangerous, but of course it should be checked out immediately. Thank you. You have done already far more than could be expected of a newcomer here, and yet you still give in the name of the Emperor. It is an inspiration to meet you and your companions, sir, and I hope that I can find some proper way of repaying you in the future. If you do not mind, however, I should probably rest. I am feeling a little stunned still. I believe the impact of the floor has... I should probably rest.
As you wish.
Thank you for your diligence and your kindness." He makes the sign back and sort of walks with you to the door, but very firmly closes it behind you, and you hear the sound of a locking bolt slide as he...
Okay. There wasn't anything untoward in his reaction to...
He seemed... It actually seemed to please him to a certain extent.
Okay.
There didn't seem to be any reaction. The only thing you notice is when he reaches out to open the door, you get another glimpse of his arm, like his lower arm again, and you catch another glimpse of the fact that he's quite heavily tattooed on the arm.
Hands that sound like what they described?
No, it all seems to be. It largely seems to be standard Imperial symbology done quite badly.
Okay. Anything Imperial creedy? I mean, I think it's already been...
Yeah, I mean, there's definite symbols of... There's at least one you recognise as protective one. There's one, actually, that appears to be a piece of scroll work held in the claws of Aquila. It's quite a large piece on the arm.
It better not have High Gothic on it.
No, it actually has in Low Gothic...
Okay.
The prayer taught to guardsmen for the safe and sure striking of a weapon.
If I had my book, I could tell you what that prayer was, but I forgot to bring it. So.
Better believe that's an execution.
That is actually an execution. Yeah.
I'll radio into these guys and start heading back down.
Fair enough. You get the radio signal as you're coming sort of back into the space underneath. So guys will be waiting for you upstairs.
Before reappearing up top, I will holster my weapon and kind of flick my coat back over it.
Fair enough.
Do you want to put your top back on?
No, my top's back in the flat.
Oh, is it? The flat.
This is my gun, my carapace armor.
Makatar Hab.
Yeah.
As you all reappear on the top, one of the sort of lay preachers approaches you and goes, "May I ask your advice, good sirs?"
Of course.
You have been down and you have seen what's in the crypt. Is the body of the creature still there?
Why do you ask?
I ask because what should we do with it? It is huge and it is corrupt.
Time to go burn things. I'm gonna raise my flamer and start one.
And burn him.
I'm gonna ask
Only the unclean ask questions.
Bug. Bug, would you be so kind as to accompany me and make sure that the flames do not damage anything important? Actually,
Get your fire extinguisher ready.
Or you could take it outside.
he must have a mechatendral thing for that.
Must do.
Well,
Maybe if you cut it into pieces.
it's in pieces.
There's still a very big piece.
You can go down and you can, if you wish to, set it afire, set it alight and burn it. It will take an entire canister's worth of fuel to do it, to get it going. But once it starts to burn, it starts to burn with it's this sort of horrible drying out, popping sound as it starts to burn. But it doesn't seem to flame much. It sort of seems to dry it out, and it sort of seems to eat into flesh, and it just sort of seems to crumble away as the flames sort of heat it up.
Pork scratchings.
And it actually, once it's on there, it seems to quite quickly eat its way across it. It's almost like once it's dried out, the flames it burns very, very quickly. It's not a particularly nice smell, but at least the smell of burning promethium masks the smell of the creature, and pretty much all you can smell is as it dries out, the smell seems to decrease and go away. And all you can actually smell is this sort of dry, burning smell and the smell of the oily promethium fuel as it burns out. And it seems quite obvious that once it's lit, it's going to take a little while to burn away, but it's not going to set fire or anything. It's not a huge sort of whoosh of flame up that might catch the ceiling on fire. And it's quite cool and damp down here, so it's probably relatively safe to leave if you don't want to sit and watch the entire thing burn for about an hour.
No, I'm going to go back. But I have something that you may be the best person to inspect.
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
Perhaps when we're back somewhere else.
We should investigate the location.
Mm. Yeah, that seems to be the priority, doesn't it, to determine.
You head out into the square, and it's quite quiet in the square now. There's still a few people moving around, and there's still a background noise of factories, because this place never sleeps. There is always a shift on. But there's probably a skeleton shift on at the moment. It's by the local equivalent, it's quite late now. It's probably the majority of people are probably asleep, especially if they've got early shifts the next day. It's
How
quite
long
quiet.
did you say a cycle was?
The shifts are. I think I said the shifts were about 9-hour shifts, and the local planetary rotation is 3 shift rotation. So you're looking at about a 27-hour day.
Yeah.
And you're currently probably in the sort of you're getting towards probably the middle of what would be the main downshift for most of the hive. Effectively night.
At some point we should probably go to sleep.
It might match the actual star above you. It depends on where you are in the world.
I guess that becomes less relevant when you're deep underground, though.
Yes, and actually, on this world, to make it simpler, all the hives stick to the same 3 shift patterns. So it doesn't matter what the actual planet's cycle is. It rotates at almost exactly 29 hours in a day, 27 hours in a day. So everyone on the entire planet uses the same shifts.
All right. Well, the location wasn't far from the temple. We should investigate it while we're here.
So we're looking for a well.
A hole.
Well, there's not water at the bottom, so no.
Well, there was a little bit.
A dry well.
Anyway, where are we going then, Bug? Come on, lead us.
Oh yeah, I've got the location.
Yeah. It leads you off out of the square, sort of along the wall of the temple. You follow the temple along and out off at one corner of the square. A road sort of branches out and heads off. And it very quickly starts to break up from this square. There's a fairly major route passes into the square, but from the other side of it, as it goes out, it's quite small roads. There was obviously very little planning in any way. People have set up and claimed land over the time, and the boundaries have been built up, and roads. But these roads, you can get a cargo truck down them, but it might be the point where anyone who wants to walk down the pavement of the roads has got a couple of feet between the wheels of a big truck and the wall of the house, so they're quite narrow. But as you sort of move through, it only doesn't take you long before you start to... On the edge of the square, there's lots of houses and lots of like tenement buildings or small closes of hab structures. But it does start to break out into what looks like might have been was once a manufacturing area. There's what looks like warehouse style buildings. There's a few blocky of the old warehouses that look ancient, like properly worn ancient, but they're very, very similar. There's about 3 or 4 of them in a row, and they're all exactly the same, apart from the wear and tear. Some of the other buildings are sort of, they've fitted the spaces they've filled as they've fitted roads and other lands become available. They've been connected.
But those ones were put there.
They were put there.
original
They were
perhaps.
probably put there. Yeah, they certainly they sort of only fit into the pattern because the pattern's grown around them.
Yeah.
And they're quite big, slab-sided, chunky metal buildings. But you get close, and you finally sort of come down an offshoot road off of one of the bigger ones, and come to this sort of hab buildings either side, 2 or 3 story hab buildings. And you come down this road to basically the end of it, and it's a dead-ended close with what looks like quite a large manufactory or warehouse building. All these habs have basically built up to it, and they basically built right up to the walls, and basically all that's visible of the wall, beyond the fact that this is taller than the hab building, it's about another 2 stories higher. So it's about 5 stories up, the whole thing. Huge, great slab-sided building is basically a gateway.
Does it sound active, or is it just like
It's quite quiet here at the moment.
Right.
In fact, actually, it's quieter than you've heard it before, really.
Someone say it was too quiet.
No, there's still all the background of the world, but it's definitely... Imagine walking sort of quiet, empty residential streets at night. That's what it feels like. And you come up to these, and they're big, huge, big, solid, like reinforced metal doors, like cargo, big. I don't know, it's like 2.5
loading
story, like loading bay doors, but instead of a roll shutter or anything like that, these are solid, reinforced, banded doors.
So I'm going to lean over and be like, trying to see what he's looking at. So, where do we go?
As far as you can tell, this thing is somewhere in that building.
Does it look like... So these big doors, do they look like they've been in use? Have they been open recently? Or...
Doesn't look like they have been. There's a certain amount of rust streaking on them, and you can see like basically corrosion formations at the join, which suggests
it's been welded shut.
not exactly welded shut, but it looks like they haven't
been moved.
I see.
moved in a long time. And actually, they do technically have handles on them. The fact that these handles are effectively iron bars that have been attached onto the door and run the width of it and are probably about 2.5 inches across. They've actually then been chained shut, and there is sort of chains round, almost closing these doors.
Blow it up.
And a big,
Blow it up.
there's quite a chunky lock sort of on those chains. And when I say chains, the links are sort of that
Wow. Okay.
around.
Is there any other way in?
Yeah, that's
that
about
we can
that's what
find?
I was going to say.
At this point, it's not anything obvious, but this building is quite large. And to get around it, you're probably basically following the streets around it. It's obviously houses have grown up to the sort of the boundaries of this building.
I have a multi-key. Can I pick the lock?
You can attempt to pick the lock.
Will that help?
No, you'll have unlocked it.
You might unlock it, but I don't think that door is going to move.
Use the demo charge. Well,
Try the
Really don't.
multi-key
that would draw
first.
quite a lot of attention, though. Yeah, but Galva seems to think that even if we manage to get the lock picked,
Doesn't mean
the door. Well, I mean, it's chained, but
Doesn't
would it
mean this door
move?
is
Is there
all,
enough slack on the chains that we could tell if the doors would open if we could remove the chain.
Probably, yeah. There's quite a bit of chain.
So can we just
Before
can we just
do that, are there other ways in?
well yeah.
Personally, I would try that way.
If there's some way up to the roof, perhaps if there's a hole in the floor, there's also a hole in the roof.
Ooh.
Well, again, that would depend if there's a way up.
Yeah.
So yeah, can we have a look around to see if there is a way up
Or any ladders.
You
or
can take
other
a look
doors?
around.
Because this is feeling reminiscent to me.
There's
Trying to get into a dodgy warehouse.
Oh yeah.
there are you have to wander around the nearby streets because this is basically the streets are built up around
Yeah.
this. This place is. You realise that this is probably actually about. This is probably the area that whatever this building is covers. It's probably 2 kilometers square.
Wow. That's pretty
It'll
enormous.
take a long time to case it out.
I mean,
around
it's
Irritan, isn't it?
the at this point you're looking at it and going this as you wander around it becomes obvious that this is a very large part of one of this local area. This is taking up looks like it might be taking up quite a large chunk of the quadrant of the dome.
Does it have windows we can break?
You can see what
They
looks
probably
like
have mesh and stuff.
you can see what look like windows, but they're at least on the 4th story up.
Oh, so that doesn't
And
make
they
any
appear
sense
to
any further
be-
forward, does
I
it?
think the demo charge
Shutters.
is the way to go.
Well, I think I'd rather try and pick the lock first and just
Well,
try
let's,
that at
let's
least.
try the door and then the lock. Because if
Let's
the
just
door is-
let's just give the door a quick try and just see if it moves at all. Because then if it does, that would suggest that we could then.
Who is the strongest out of us?
I would have guessed you.
I have strength 32.
Well, why don't we all
Don't
try?
know.
We could combine our strength.
I'll just grab one of them and kind of,
Give it a pull.
try and...
You can feel a little bit of. There's a little bit of movement in there.
Okay.
I think the door might open.
It's multi-key and intelligence.
Security is the skill.
It's a security.
Oh, it's security. Oh, right.
Yeah, the multi-key gives you a bonus.
Which is agility. Oh, no. Oh, right. So what's my bonus on...
A multi-key, I think,
it's
gives you
plus
a
20,
plus
isn't it?
20, I think.
Okay.
So you're on 47 basically.
All right.
Roll low. Yes.
2.
Rolled a 2.
That'll probably do it no matter what. Oh no, my mistake. A character with a multi-key gains a plus 30 bonus to security test when attempting to open.
So
locks.
even more.
So I've passed by 5
Degrees.
degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's, as it turns out, it's not a particularly complex lock. It's effectively a very
Right.
large padlock.
Or I'm really good at my multi-key.
You can claim it to us though. Oh, really complicated that
Oh,
one.
this is going to be a while. Yeah, hang on.
Oh, cowboys in here.
Yeah. You've effectively, it's a very large padlock that probably every key for the entire run of the padlocks is exactly the same.
Oh, one of them. Fair enough.
So it takes you seconds to work it up, and
Clunk.
it
Oh,
sort of
good.
comes apart. Removing the chains from the door makes a certain amount of noise. It's quite a rattly, and you can hear the sound of the sort of that sort of rattling.
And if you drop it and the end falls out,
Yeah.
the whole thing just...
Yeah.
Can we
It does
try
sort of
and
echo
do it as
around
quietly as possible? Like
the roads.
using several of us to kind of move the chain up
Loop
away
it
from the
through.
thing and then walk along.
If you want the chain to be quiet, you should wrap it in a cloth.
We don't have enough cloth.
You can try and remove it quietly if you want.
As quietly as possible.
As quietly as possible.
Basically
Who's going to
using
attempt it?
Well, I think it's going to need more than one of us.
Is it sleight of hand or silent move?
No, it's just going to be agility.
Oh, I'll give it a go. I've got some good agilities.
Can I
could try.
I passed.
use my
I've got
can I
fate
use my
points.
Macandrite and then roll for intelligence instead of agility?
On this occasion, no.
Oh no.
I'm going to adjust
This
down.
is literally you picking up chains and trying not to rattle them.
Fine. Okay.
I adjust down and pass.
I
Are
got
we
2
all
degrees.
doing it,
of
or-
failed.
Can
Yeah,
we
everyone.
stand back
Everyone,
if we think it might make
everyone
it
get
worse.
in here.
Well, I think you can stand back if you think you'll make it worse.
Would have made it worse.
I passed at 2 degrees.
I pass.
Santa?
I was just going to keep out of the way since you're not doing it my way anyway.
Okay.
They're not doing it my way either. I want to use a demo charge.
That would be worse.
That would
How'd you
make
do?
a lot more
I failed
noise.
by half a degree.
Okay.
You could use a fate point and adjust down.
You basically you manhandle the chains. There's
Well,
a
he doesn't
little
need
bit
more
of
than 2 of us, though, does
there's
he?
a little bit of noise,
Well, 3 of us.
but
have
there
rolled.
isn't the sort of rattling of chains across metal. You manage to sort of lift them away relatively quietly, and sort of get them. You can sort of gently put them down by the side of the by the doors, without it doesn't appear that anyone's sort of paid much attention to you. Although you are surrounded by habs that you could well be habited, although they're probably asleep at this point.
Well, they were.
Well, we'll chance it.
Yeah. You
Well,
see no signs
Do you
of
have
any
anything for
life.
Yeah.
I want some WD-40.
Are you carrying any oil?
I've got some a vial of sacred machine oil, but that seems a terrible waste.
It does seem
Yeah,
a
you wouldn't want to
terrible
use
way.
that. I don't know. You might carry like a kind of oil can. I don't know. You're a tech priest.
No, sadly not.
Okay. Well.
Any cooks? Someone walking around
Well,
with
I always carry this bottle of extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, no, you if you want to try and open it, you're just going to have to...
Yeah, just
Yeah, we'll just manage
not a lot. Basically, enough that we could kind of slide in.
Fair enough. You get out of it, and you can feel it starting to move, but there's a little bit of resistance there. It doesn't quite want to do it. Do you want to put more strength into it?
I will ask Griff to stand up like 2 paces behind me in case it suddenly lurches, because I don't want the door to fly open.
Okie dokie.
And then I will put a boot on there and push.
Strength test.
Believe in the power of Jesus.
Yes, 18.
18.
Thanks, Jesus.
The door moves, and it moves relatively quietly, actually. There's a gentle creak from the like metallic sort of sound as it opens. But you manage to pull it, and it does sort of jump slightly, and you you bump into Griff as it goes back. But you get the door open,
Right, it stopped it flying open with Griff to break to stop me moving.
and it seems to be quite. It seems to move quite happily now. It's probably just sort of starting to sort of rust in place, but you've moved it before it's
Rusted.
completely bonded.
Okay.
It's not as bad as I thought.
Oh,
All right, let's go in.
comes up.
As there's enough space to get sort of one person through at a time. So who's
Captain
gonna
Cadia
enter?
is going through first.
Captain Cady's going in. Fair enough.
I would like to keep an eye on the local kind of habs that you were talking
Mhm.
about as we enter to see if anyone seems to be.
Watching.
Yeah.
Right. In which case, perception check for both of you.
One in, one
I'll
out.
be going in straight after Griff.
Captain Cadia, da-da-da-da-da. He is using his eyes. He passed with no success degrees.
You sort of move through the door. You have to turn slightly to slide in, and you sort of it's quite dark and gloomy inside. But there's definitely there's some light filtering in from outside, especially now through the door. And you sort of look out into what is effectively a large loading bay area, is what it looks like. There's a few scattered cargo vehicles still parked up, and there's piles of crates and boxes and pallets sort of scattered around the place, and there's a little bit of sort of rubbish scattered across the floor. But what really hits you as you come through is the smell.
Mm.
Can you give me a willpower test, please?
Well, I can do. 90.
Do you want to
You
fake
vomit.
that?
Well, it depends what type of smell it is.
It might be flowers.
It is a this.
not
There is this really
bacon.
strong. The last time you smell anything like this was on the battlefield about a week and a half after the battle had ended.
Grim.
And it is just the smell of decomposition, but that was on the open skies. This is an enclosed building, and it just
probably.
stinks. And
Retch.
you do just you retch and as you cover it, you retch, and your eyes just start watering because the smell is so intense. It sort of overwhelms everything, and you just can't not help but retch.
Grim. It's grim in here, I will say.
The smell is, as now you open the door, the smell starts to waft outside.
I was going to say,
Can
do I need to take one because
All
I was
of
literally
you,
following
can everyone
straight
else
in.
take a willpower test, but at plus 10, please?
You all get plus 10.
Passed by 3 or 4 degrees.
I passed by no degrees. I have sound constitution. Does that help me?
That gives you more wounds. Not
It's not digestive constitution.
no, not quite.
How do you get
2
Sam?
degrees.
Well, I still passed.
Meh.
2 degrees. 6
Fair enough. The smell cut wafts out, and it's this horrible smell
I'm gonna
assails
pull my
you.
scarf up though.
Yeah. But you manage to hold it. It's not too bad, as it's just wafting out. But you can hear the sound of retching inside from Griff.
Oh, no, I would literally have followed straight in.
Well, it may be that he's taken the full brunt of it, and it's
Yeah, because kind of my combat training is probably going to have some similarities to his.
yeah.
And literally just 2 in cover patterns.
As you're watching,
There are some buildings.
there are some buildings. Excellent.
They explode.
There are some dark buildings.
There are some
with
dark
no
buildings.
lights.
They might have people in them. I'm not sure. I don't
Right.
notice anything suspicious.
Good.
Okay, yeah, with that stink, the gun's coming out.
My gun was already out. I'm
Yeah.
going to start shooting the smell now.
Same thing. It's this big, quite open,
It's not
echoing
how it
space. You
works.
can see there's a raised area at sort of the back of it, which seems to be to help facilitate loading stuff. And you can see doors in big, like double doors, sort of
Double doors.
dotted along the wall.
Okay. Can we tell where the smell's coming from?
It's all pervasive. It's not coming from anywhere. It is just the smell of the building now.
Can we see any signs of, like, death, violence,
No, this seems to just have been abandoned.
but smells of dead?
Just general death.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go
Smells.
in, aren't I? Because I'm going to have to...
Or specs us.
Or, yeah.
Fair enough. As
Oh,
you
shit,
enter, part of your brain basically just bypasses your nasal
Yay!
things. You can still smell it, but it's switched off the connection. Part of your training switches off the connection to your stomach.
Oh, good old brain, thanks.
This is probably
Thanks, brainwashing.
this is probably a legacy of growing up where you did some sort of implant to help you deal with gravity fluctuations. The ability to basically control
Not be sick.
your stomach.
Bonus.
But you can still smell everything. You're just not thinking about it.
Mhm. Okay.
But the basically the Auspex suggests you need to keep moving basically across the loading bay towards the sort of the rest.
You
towards
said
the-
it's quite dark in here.
It is quite dark.
Okay, yeah, the torch will be going back onto the gun.
Yeah.
Is everyone else armed?
I am.
I am also.
Oh, I know he's got a flamer.
It's
That's
now
alright.
empty.
Might burn the smell off.
Still have some
Oh, good.
canisters.
I think we're all
Bug or
armed.
Galva obviously carrying weapons.
Sorry.
Define obviously.
Can I see them carrying weapons from my training of probably spotting?
Well,
You can ask us
Galva's
if
carrying
you're
a
carrying
shotgun. It's
Yeah.
quite a difficult thing to conceal.
alright. What
I mean,
about
there's
what
other
about Bug?
things, but-
I've got a las pistol and a las carbine and a
Oh,
metal staff. And a
so
knife.
you are. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're armed.
Yeah.
Okay. I just thought I'd check
Everyone's armed.
Yeah.
because I actually have 2 guns.
One
I have
for
2
each
guns
of
as
you.
well.
Oh, I also have a glow lamp if that helps us to see.
It might do.
2 knives.
Yeah.
and a
That
sword.
might be worth-
Hold up my
Most of
data
us
slate.
are wearing my
Might be
helmet.
worth kindling the glow lamp.
I'm fine if I get shot
With
in
your
my
phone in
arms or
front of
legs.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You've got that data slate I gave you earlier. You were complaining about that at the time.
I
Now,
don't know what you mean. What data state?
Anyway, we're going
Right.
towards the hole.
Yes, we
yeah,
will.
find the smelly hole.
Fair enough. You make you can sort of pick your way. It's fairly easy to go. It's fairly open. This loading dock. It's quite large. I mean, you could probably fit 4, maybe 5, sort of 8 to 10 wheel cargo transporter trucks in here at any given time. To
Where's
load
the
up.
padlock?
I'm guessing you left it
I
outside.
closed the
unless
door
someone's carrying it.
behind us and put something
we'd
behind it. wasn't
Probably
it?
bring the padlock inside so someone can't go on the outside.
That's a good
You can
one.
pull the door too,
'Cause I've
but there's
played
no real
this
way
game.
because they
Well,
open
basically,
outwards.
if
And I've
there's
got
some
people
like
in
crates
places
or
they
something,
didn't
can I just put
understand.
something behind it so if someone opened
Smelly
the door,
places.
they wouldn't be able to
Probably.
see it and they might make some noise.
If you want to, you can try and
I mean, is
pile
there a
some
way to
stuff.
shut the door?
Yeah,
You
I'm
can-
not trying to
there's
block
something
it,
to
I'm
pull it
just trying to make
closed,
noise
But
if they
you
come
couldn't
through.
use
Lock
the
it.
padlock to bolt it. It
Yeah, that's
seems-
fine. We'll just kind of pull it closed.
It should be fine. The area, it's quite quiet in here. There's obviously it's quite thick walls, and there's can't hear anything
No machinery.
running. So and it's sort of gently muting the outside, the sounds
Now
of the outside
it's too
world.
quiet.
It does feel a little bit weird. Having been on this world for a while, there is always noise. It's quite in here. It is quite dampened. There's sort of the sound of your footsteps echoes quite loudly as you cross this sort of space, and there's steps built into this sort of raised platform thing, so you can get up onto it, and you come to basically you're provided with about 4 sets of doors, equally spaced along the platform, probably designed so that something would roll up and line itself up with a set of doors and be
A
easy
loading
to load.
bay, yeah.
Given the size of this building, are there like gantries and stuff above us?
This one only seems to be about 2 stories up, and there's no gantries or anything. There seems to be what might be an office, like a little office built into one corner.
This level is like 2 stories tall, or this building is.
This level,
Yeah.
or
You
the
said it was like what, 5?
5.
Yeah.
So at this point,
Mhm.
it's 2 stories within this area.
Yeah.
So there's like a ceiling within
Yeah.
the building. So we're not going to be sniped.
Well, I
Something we're
wouldn't
worried
go
about.
that far.
Not from a gantry, anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll find out, won't we?
There's nothing
That's
above
what I'd
it.
do.
There's nothing above it. It's one of those ones where probably if any gantries were put into this level, it'd interfere with the vehicles.
Is the smell like what? The smell of the beast, the kind of rotting smell.
It's not in quite the same way. This is a much more prosaic smell of decomposition. It's so powerful you can't really tell what is causing
Where it's
it.
coming from.
It could be you've walked into the local waste disposal unit that's basically been shut down, and they haven't cleared down the last loads that came in, and it's just been left to ferment.
No one emptied the fridge.
Yeah. Or it could be anything else.
So this place hasn't been used in a long time, has it?
Reasonable.
Given the door.
Reasonably long time.
3 years.
Okay.
Considering how big it is, it's quite unusual.
Yeah, I
that
was
it
Seems
would,
like a waste of space.
That's a lot of
that nothing has
reoccupied.
reoccupied it
or
for something.
has it?
Good.
So,
or salvaged stuff.
Yeah.
There are still vehicles in here. No one's broken in to salvage them.
do we need to go through one of these doorways then?
Yeah, this seems to be.
to follow where the Auspex is.
Yeah, it's suggesting that you're pretty much somewhere ahead of you in the building.
Given what you said about the size of the streets outside, how big are the vehicles in here?
The
'Cause
vehicles.
You said that they seemed
Lorries.
quite kind of chunky and that the streets are fairly
They look like you could load quite large vehicles in this.
Yeah.
The doors are certainly big enough to get something like a 8. Probably the biggest thing that's going to be in here is something like an 8-wheeled cargo vehicle. So a small Arctic lorry. Basically.
So would that fit through those
you might get
streets?
it. You'd probably get it down those streets, but you wouldn't want to be any other
Not
sort of
in the
vehicle
lorry.
coming the other way.
Okay.
And certainly, it's going to be anything going past is going to be, if you're in the windows of the Habs, you could probably almost lean out the windows and touch anything that went that big that went past.
I'm going to go through one of these doorways and see where the
Fair enough.
Auspex is taking us.
You push open the doors and they move quite easily, and it opens out into a gigantic space. It's a huge expanse. It's probably about maybe a quarter of the floor plan of the entire building, and seems to
So
run
it's about half a K.
and probably about that square.
Wow.
Bloody hell.
And as you come into it, you sort of it is huge. It is cavernous. It runs from the floor you're on, and it looks like it runs all the way to the roof, because you can see the roof line is slightly peaked, and you can see what might be skylights or light wells in the ceiling. But as you look around, there's obviously something in the middle of this room. There's this huge open expanse of space and there's this, it looks like a huge pile, basically, of stuff has just been dumped in the middle of the room. And the smell as you push open the door just washes over all of you. It is absolutely... It is so rank. In fact, all of you can give me willpower tests at -20.
As he's playing with whatever door he's going to, I would like to further
Actually,
investigate
failed
the
by
vehicle.
1 degree this time.
Okay.
Yay!
Saunter over and have a look at the vehicles. There's 2 basically backed up.
Also, I'm glad that I was nowhere near that door because
How did you do? The
I
rest of you?
passed after using a fate point to re-roll my 99.
Nope,
Ooh.
nope. I'm gonna go and be sit behind this truck.
I failed by 5.
I failed by 1.
I failed by 2 degrees, I think. -20.
Fair enough. You 2 sort of retch again, and the priest is sick. I'm afraid that Gaius throws up in front of him. Just sort of doubles over, just throws up. It is so horrible, and it's this thing of the smell. And you can look up, and in this place there are gantries running across. You can see machinery hanging from the ceiling. The interesting thing is the main floor seems to have been cleared. There doesn't seem to be anything large on the floor apart from this. Seems to be slap bang in the middle of this huge pile of whatever it is. It's quite dark, but it reaches probably a third of the way of the height of the building.
I don't like where this is going.
It seems to be this. It stinks in this room. You can't really tell what the pile is. It's quite obviously quite a long way away.
Yeah, I'm going to be
You can
advancing.
tell by
on
the
it.
smell of it.
How big are the doors that they just went through?
Sort of oversized double.
Are we talking
Okay.
like
Double doors.
loading bays for lorry type things?
Yeah, probably, yeah, sort
So
of.
pretty hefty, like 10-foot shutter type. Or
No,
10.
not quite. More sort of 8-foot
Okay.
shuttered doors.
So double corridor doors, but
Yeah.
bigger slightly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And considered quite a bit taller.
Mhm.
They're quite they look quite tall and narrow. They're probably about 8 or 9, sort of bigger than double door wide. It's just they're sort of like a story and a half high.
Other than the sound of a couple of people retching and my footsteps as I walk forwards, can
Well,
I hear anything?
You hear the echo of your footsteps, and there's a sort of
Dripping noise.
a slight dripping noise and a slight just there's the odd sort of jangle of metal moving. You can feel an airflow in this building. There's a definite sort of slight down draft of airflow. It's
probably
cool air falling.
Broken windows or a hole or something in the building.
Possibly. There's definitely, and actually you can feel it sort of just washes past you, which might also explain why the smell was so bad. It's actually sort of blown at you as you open the doors.
So it's pressurised and you open the door and you go just literally hit in the face with it.
Yeah. Yeah. As you walk forward, and you're shining the light, you start to pick out in the gloom a colour.
I took a gamble.
No, it's not exactly blue.
Is it kind of corpse green?
That shading to rusty brown?
Yeah, I thought it might be. Is this a large, very, very large pile of corpses, perchance?
It's a large pile of plague bearers.
Is it one large
family
corpse?
of those monsters all sitting?
I
No, this is
need
their
an
nest.
adult.
That was their baby.
It is as you pan the sort of the light over as you get closer, it become your worst fears are sort of realised. Yes,
It's a giant pile of corpses.
it is a very large pile of rotting, decomposing bodies
that reaches like meters into the
air. And as you realise this, I want you to take give me a willpower test -20.
becomes -10 for me.
Why?
27.
He's stubborn.
I'm gonna adjust down to pass.
You're gonna pass it. You turn away.
It's basically my being from the Scholar Progenium. It kind of lessens.
Oh, I see.
He's trained for the weird and wonderful things that the universe can throw at him. You turn away and look back at the others who are sort of stood there, who haven't quite worked out what it is yet. And as you sort of turn back to look at them, as they sort of, well, Gaius is probably just still throwing up, but the other two probably starting to step forward. As the others start to step forward, you just put up a hand and go, I wouldn't come any closer. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight.
Next time
On Thomas the Tank Engine.
Gaius, I'm
Dude.
pregnant and you're the father.
I have amnesia.
I hope you all enjoyed
Thank
that.
you, Lars. There you go.
I hope everyone
Teamwork.
watching all enjoyed that as well. For these,
Forgot we're still on camera there. I was about to just go.
So bad.
yeah. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that.
Yes.
And I hope everyone is ready to come back and discover exactly why you now have a very large warehouse full of corpses.
Harlow corpses.
Because
It sounds like the start of a really dark joke.
Well,
No,
there's his job for you. Think of one by next time.
I don't think I should say that on camera.
So,
Meanwhile, I'm going to see if they hid their keys under their... I'll just be
Take
like,
a
no.
truck.
Loot the bodies?
No.
Anyway.
well, so thank you all of you guys. Thank everyone out in Garblag Land watching. Quick reminder, of course, to come and have a look at all the other stuff.
Links and things.
are below. There are all the other shows that are still running. We've got Star Trek Morpheus, Scion,
Yep.
Vostok's Chance, and of course
Planescape.
Planescape,
Dungeons and Dragons
Dun-
Dark Cage.
Dark Cage, and of course there is always the back catalogue of everything else that
Flint and
and all
Steel!
the other
For
ones we've
example.
done over the years. Please do like, comment, subscribe, have a look at the links below, check out
All of our stuff.
all
and
of the
things.
stuff, and we will
See you next time.
see you next time on the Edge of the Emperor's Light. Goodbye all.
Bye.